Today's Dan Le Batard Show is sponsored by ADT Commercial for Business. ADT Commercial serves businesses ranging from mid-sized organizations to large-scale enterprises. Think of them as a special team who has one focus, your business security. They provide a comprehensive line of security, fire, life safety, and risk management solutions, professional-grade systems for commercial-grade businesses. With ADT Commercial, every day is game day. Fortune 1000 companies rely on ADT Commercial for highly complex, scalable, integrated solutions that help solve their unique business challenges. And if you are looking for a partner to upgrade or take over the monitoring and service of your current system, ADT Commercial can help to painlessly install and maintain large-scale and multi-site businesses. No pain, that's good in sports and good in business security. Visit us today at ADT.com/special teams to learn more. The Dan Le Batard with Stugotz Show podcast is presented by Capital One. This is Banking Reimagined.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz podcast.
There are bigger problems in the world, but yesterday I was super frustrated because our show didn't have the chemistry and the interactions that we normally have. We're usually able to talk to each other. And so it was me, Stugotz, Mike Ryan, and then Chris on a bad phone line, and you couldn't hear Roy right. But we have just had shipped in modern-day 2020 technology that allows me to now see the shipping containers, see everyone we're doing the show with, and give them the news, Stugotz, that Tom Brady is no longer going to be a Patriot.
Guys, the dynasty is over. I am a Jets fan. You are Dolphin fans. Tom Brady is no longer inside the AFC East. Or is he? We have no idea. But today is a day of celebration. The dynasty is over. It is over. I've been asking for Brady and Belichick to get out of my life for a decade and a half, and Brady is finally out of my life, I think. It's a weird celebration.
Billy, you're not on television. You're on the radio, so people can't hear you as you wave your hands around there. Thank you for your contributions to everybody celebrating that Tom Brady is now no longer going to be a Patriot. He has gone to Instagram, and he has said the following, and this is, 20 years in the making. To all my teammates, coaches, executives, and staff, Coach Belichick, RKK, and the Kraft family and the entire organization, I want to say thank you for the past 20 years of my life and the daily commitment to winning and creating a winning culture built on great values. I'm grateful for all that you have taught me. I've learned from everyone. You all have allowed me to maximize my potential, and that is all a player can ever hope for. Everything we have accomplished brings me great joy, and the lessons I learned will carry on with me forever. Couldn't be the man I am today without the relationships you have allowed me to build with you. I've benefited from all you have given me. I cherished every opportunity. I had to be a part of our team, and I love you all for that. Our team has always set a great standard in pro sports, and I know it will continue to do just that. Although my football journey will take place elsewhere, I appreciate everything that we have achieved, and I'm grateful for our incredible team accomplishments. I've been privileged to have had the opportunity to know each other and every one of you, and to have the memories we've created together. Bob Kraft says that Tom Brady is like a son to him, that they talked last night, and now what's it going to be, guys? Is it going to be Tampa Bay, Stugotz? Is it going to be Los Angeles, the Chargers?
I think most people feel like it's probably going to be the Chargers who, it's funny. Rex Ryan said they were the best team in the NFL 2 years ago. They were 12-4 2 years ago. So there's a lot of talent on that team. They had a lot of injuries last year. I have a sneaky, weird feeling, Dan, that he is going to come down to Miami and play for the Dolphins. I know people are saying Bucks. I know people are talking about Bruce Arians and that connection. But Adam Schefter has said a couple of times in the last few days that he's heard some stuff about the Dolphins. And so that would not surprise me because it's a perfect situation from this standpoint. They're likely going to draft Tua, and Tua's likely not going to be ready. And Tom Brady is familiar with Brian Flores. And Flores just basically signed the entire Patriots defense yesterday. And so I think Tom Brady, there's a realistic chance that he ends up down here in Miami and plays quarterback for 2 years, and they allow Tua to learn from the greatest quarterback who's ever lived. I think that's a reality. I really do.
That sounds like a Brady hunch to me. That sounds like a very strong Brady hunch, not a reality, just a Brady hunch. That's all that's in play there. But the Dolphins yesterday, came out of the box spending money all over the place because they have a lot of money to spend. And a lot of people like those moves, but I don't understand how you can measure whether Eric Flowers is a good signing or not when that guy had a season where, he allowed 169 pressures and then they move him over to guard. I don't know how to do the measurements on some of what the Dolphins did, but what you're saying makes sense. What you're saying is something that it looks like the Dolphins were getting in play. If they already did this with Ryan Fitzpatrick, rather.
Yeah, good save.
Why wouldn't they go this route?
No, I think it's a perfectly reasonable route to go. And so, plus I think Tom Brady thinks the winning goes where he goes. So, he leaves New England, stays inside the AFC East, can still stick it to Belichick. I'm not certain the Dolphins don't become the best team. Well, I guess the Bills with the moves they made yesterday with Stephon Diggs. There's so much happening here with the NFL. But I think Brady kind of views it like this, Dan. The winning goes where I go. Not where Belichick goes. It goes where I go. And if I go to Miami's going to be the favorites to win the AFC East. So.
Well, the Bills and the Dolphins both behaved yesterday like they saw weakness in the Patriots for the first time in 20 years. I think a lot of people would probably still expect the Patriots to go to 11-5. I just like the back and forth bleep you of Brady saying, look, I'll do it with the Dolphins in your division, and Belichick saying, watch me do it with Andy Dalton.
Like if the Patriots line up with the red rifle with Andy Dalton,
what could Belichick do? What's the thing that Belichick could do to most show? Like if this is an ego war between the two of them, who's responsible for the winning? Andy Dalton would be a pretty good place for Belichick to start.
Dalton, Jacoby Brissett, I guess. But no, Dalton, I think Dalton would be the perfect guy to go to. But who would you be, Dan, you'd be rooting for the Patriots, right? You'd be rooting for Belichick to get it done with Andy Dalton, correct?
Why the hell would I ever root for the Patriots? They've done enough winning. Why would I root for the Patriots under any circumstances?
I'm just saying, if you had to choose one of those two teams to win that division, it is now Brady with the Dolphins trying to stick it to Belichick and Belichick trying to stick it to Brady by going with Andy Dalton. I think I'd even be rooting for the Patriots in that scenario. It'd be funny if Belichick got it done with Andy Dalton.
The reports are that Tampa Bay has made a significant offer and that the Chargers have made a significant offer. And Jeff Darlington gets to be right. Are we going to get a hold of Jeff Darlington to find out? We've lost this bet. He said he would be shot. Look, Chris Cody is hiding from me and... are we going to get a situation where Jeff Darlington is going to tase one of us or give one of us the stone cold stunner?
Well, I think he's already won the bet. Brady announced that he's leaving, and that was the bet. He gets to stun or shock one of us. I'm just hoping that he chooses you.
What's with the one of us stuff? It was all Chris Cody's idea. Chris is the obvious target there.
I have in front of me, Jeff Darlington is taking a bit of a victory
just signed
lap.
Off from
he did
app.
Just sign off. Jeff Darlington is taking a bit of a victory lap. He posted a video saying it's not simply therapeutic for him, which it is, but also because I think you can now watch with a more open mind to learn and understand how Tom Brady got to this moment. And a guy wrote in, Jeff, don't take this the wrong way, but posting a 5-minute clip fest of you gabbing across ESPN platforms about Brady just because it proves you were right is navel-gazing, look at me nonsense to the highest degree. And Darlington comes back with, after the accusatory nonsense I've heard from Patriot fans and Boston media over the last month, you're damn right. Accurate reporting matters to me. Being credible matters to me. Now on to the next chapter in this story. Moving on. Jeff Darlington doing a little mic dropping here on everybody.
I'm so proud of him. I've never been prouder of him. This is the way journalism should be, Dan. Celebrate the ones you get right and just move past the ones you don't get right. Because I'm certain Darlington has a number of those.
Does he?
Unnecessary shot at Jeff Darlington.
I don't feel like Darlington has a number of those. I don't think that's fair.
We all got him, Dano.
No, Darlington doesn't have any of those. Darlington, you just took a shot at a totally credible reporter after he got the story right. But he didn't do the most mic dropping among reporters yesterday. Look at this guy. John Krasinski, senior writer for The Athletic. He covers the T-Wolves and the Vikings. And listen to this flex. I wrote about the Vikings possibly trading Diggs in January, and it was called clickbait. I wrote about the Wolves trading for D'Angelo Russell, and it was called clickbait. I don't write clickbait.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. The Dan Le Batard Show is brought to you by Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. All guests on the Dan Le Batard Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Bob Ryan going to join us in just a minute here. Jeff Darlington going to gloat at 11 a.m. Eastern. Here's your SportsCenter update. Tom Brady has announced on Instagram that he is leaving the New England Patriots. Amari Cooper will sign a 5-year, $100 million deal with the Cowboys with $60 million guaranteed. Marcus Mariota will sign with the Raiders. The Falcons cut Devonta Freeman. He had 3 years remaining on his deal. And finally, firefighters in England were called in to deal with a fire after a pig sparked a blaze in its pen by swallowing a pedometer, which then combusted after, quote, nature had taken its course. The firefighters believed the copper from the pedometer's batteries reacted to the pig's excrement and dry hay to ignite the fire. Here's the SelectQuote difference. Most companies give you one option, one policy, one rate, but SelectQuote shops it could get you up to 10 options from highly rated life insurance companies for a free personalized quote. Call 800-780-1010 or go to SelectQuote.com today. For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
So Stephen A. Smith just said that Robert Kraft called him during the last commercial break and said something along the lines, and there's been a statement put out, but to be very clear, if Tom Brady wanted to stay, we would have worked it out, and he would have remained a New England Patriot. But Tom Brady wanted to leave, and there's no good way to do this. There's no good way to do these endings. Bob Ryan of the Boston Globe is with us on ESPN Radio. Bob, what can you tell us about what you believe to be the truth here? Is what Stephen A. Smith is saying Bob Kraft told him, is that the truth? Because it's felt to me for a while like Bob Kraft has wanted it known, hey, this isn't going to be my fault if he leaves.
I think we've all one of the aspects of this story, there are three parties involved. Brady, Belichick, and Kraft. One of the aspects of this story was that we, the media, the fans, believed that Bob Kraft did not want the blood on his hands, metaphorically speaking. So no question, he will go out of his way now to say, it wasn't me, Tom just wants to go. So that's A. B is Belichick clearly, if he insisted that Tom Brady would be his quarterback next year, there would have been certainly a difference in the way Tom Brady thinks. And third, whatever Tom Brady wants to do in general, over and above playing football, I think this move is a part of a vaster plan, a life plan that includes playing a little more football and then moving to the next phase for him. That's what I think. There's three moving parts here. Let me just say and go back to the Garoppolo trade. It was abundantly clear here that Belichick was willing to cut this cord with Brady 3 years ago. He was going to go with Garoppolo. It was no problem. He did not want to make that trade. And he made that trade in haste, which he never does, sent him to a good sanctuary. He didn't exile him to some football Siberia, sent him to a good place with a coach he liked, and took 70 cents on the dollar in return, and did not get as much for him as he should have. He was willing to cut the cord right then and there. And one more thing, and I'll shut up. Remember that interview that Brady gave, and he was asked, do you feel respected? And he said, I'll plead the fifth. That was telling, and now we see the final outcome.
Who's disrespected him? What is the relationship with Belichick and Brady?
I think it's very professional, and I think that Belichick will give us now all the lip service about the gratitude he has for what Tom did in these 20 years, and so forth. I don't think it was professional. I don't think there was, for whatever reason, we don't know how they interacted, and we don't know how Tom, maybe there were things said to him that he didn't like, or things not said to him that he wanted to hear, whatever. I think, I felt now, as this thing has unfolded over the last couple of years, that it was a professional relationship, and there weren't going to be any Christmas cards when it was all over.
Bob, how do you think, what's been the reaction of Patriot fans thus far, and how do you think they're going to react to Tom Brady, especially if he decides to stay inside the AFC East to play for one of those teams?
That will be interesting. First of all, I can't answer the first part since I'm sitting in my house as everybody else is, and therefore I don't know what the reaction is. I did turn over a little bit of talk radio this morning, but all I heard was the host. I didn't hear anything from the fans. I think people have been bracing themselves for this. I don't think that people who have been paying attention are going to be shocked. I think now you exhale. If you really wanted to keep them, sure, you were hoping against hope that it would all work out, that you'd have Tom Brady next year, he'd retire as a Patriot and with the proper acclaim, blah, blah, blah. Well, now you can take a deep, you can exhale. It's not going to happen that way. So move on. I think a lot of people prepared themselves mentally. With a lot of talk about here. Well, if he goes, what's the disposition? Is it Stidham? Is it Jarrett Stidham? Are they going to draft a quarterback in the first round, which I suspect with 2 picks they very well may? Will they go out and get a veteran quarterback? Everybody from the pie in the sky that they're never going to get Teddy Bridgewater to Phillip Rivers to whoever. I don't know what they're going to do. People have been talking about this. We've been preparing ourselves for this. Really, it's not as if it came absolutely out of nowhere.
How much does ego have to do with what's happening here, Bob?
Well, it's always, obviously you have two, get 3 monumental egos, really, because believe me, Bob Kraft wants to be thought of as the greatest owner who's ever lived. He's got an ego. Belichick clearly has an ego, and he deserves to manifest an ego, and Brady deserves to manifest an ego. It's always going to be a situation, but once again, until we see how this unfolds with Brady, to see where he goes, and then we start then try to interpret what does that mean? Why did he pick this team over that team? Was it strictly football? What's going on here? We don't have the answers to this. But clearly we're talking about 3 massive egos in a sense. Brady has always managed to submerge it in the interest of this team. I heard a good interview with Rob Ninkovich this morning talking about what a phenomenal teammate, humble. He used the word humble about 9 times. Humble, given the stratosphere that he occupies. He said he's like an alien. He's so far above us, yet he interacted with us as in his own way, and he was so humble. Blah blah blah. You're gonna, he had an ego. Yeah, of course.
Bob Ryan, Boston Globe, with us. Can you explain to us salary cap sport? Tom Brady obviously has taken a lot of discounts over the years. Like, how bothered is he that the Patriots didn't make him feel more wanted, and how right and how human is it to be bothered by that?
Ben Volen of the Globe annotated in the Sunday paper 10 times contracts were up that he took something for the team, in a sense. Now, people will argue, well, no, it was only common sense, but we're not sure that everybody else would have done it to the extent that he did it. And maybe this is what led to the I plead the fifth answer to the question about do you feel sufficiently respected in this organization. That was an amazingly telling answer, and I think, and he never elaborated on it and publicly that I know of, but it stood for it and spoke for itself. Yeah, I think he felt that there was, this past year, I think he was very upset about the weaponry. He did a lack of same. At one point in the season, he actually had Antonio Brown and Josh Gordon to throw to, and I'm not defending the keeping them in there, by the way, myself, but I'm saying, but he had them. Brown caught a touchdown pass. He might have had a big year here, but we all know he's Antonio Brown, and blah blah blah. We all know that answer. So he was stuck with. In the end, he had an injured Edelman and James White coming out of the backfield. He had no tight end all year. They being Belichick, did not sufficiently address that situation at all, and that kind of really frustrate Tom. There's a major weapon that's not even available to him. I think he was very upset about that, and it has to play into what's going on here.
Bob, where do you see Brady kind of finishing out the career here? You talked about, life plans, and this is maybe bigger than football for him. So he's got a couple of years left. Where can you see him and his family playing out the end of his career?
That's a good question, Stugotz, because, the logical answer would have been Los Angeles if he's not going to, since he was never going to go to the Jets or the Giants. So Los Angeles, had the Chargers been available, maybe, but the Rams don't need him, but that would have been one. Las Vegas, maybe, except maybe still may happen there. Tampa, they're talking about. I can't see how Tampa Bay, no offense to the people of Tampa, St. Pete and Bradenton and all that, but come on, that's not exactly a mecca for the kind of commerce that I think that Tom Brady has in mind. I don't know, but there's some. I'm just saying this. I don't know what it is, but I believe in his mind, and who says he's going to successfully execute it, there is some master plan in Tom Brady's mind. Keep in mind he's got this TB12 thing going on, and I think that's the generality of it, is that he's going to want to be the, this guru to people in his mind for the rest of his life. That's going to be his life's calling, I think. So however it's going to manifest itself, ultimately, I don't know.
Is Bob Ryan willing to make Tom Brady the greatest winner in Boston sports history over Bill Russell? Is he willing to do it?
Scared.
Is he willing to do it? Is he willing?
Just sum it up. This city is so ridiculously blessed and so unbelievably unfairly compared to the rest of you poor people and all these outlying areas like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Miami, and Dallas, and so forth, that aren't us, that haven't had this incredible bounty of having Bill Russell, Bobby Orr, Larry Bird, and now Tom Brady, etc. Bill Russell, let me just put this thing to rest, okay? From 1955 to 1969, Bill Russell competed for 16 championships, 2 NCAAs, and Olympics, and 13 NBA championships. His teams won 14 of those, in which he was the primary player in every one of them. And the 15th, 1958, he was injured, or they beat the St. Louis Hawks. Sorry, St. Louis. Sorry, Bob Pettit, who got 50 points in Game 6 and in order to beat the Celtics by 2 when Russell was hurt. So there's nobody ever in American team sports who has a resume even close to it. Forgot about it. Everybody else is tied for second place in that regard. Brady, though, in Boston comes in second. Yes.
You're the best. Thank you, Bob. Good talking to you. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bob. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, making it easy to bundle your home and car insurance. Jeff Darlington is expected to join us in just a second here on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. He's going to shock one of us. Hopefully it's not me. Here's your SportsCenter update. The NFL news will not stop, man. My goodness. The Saints have re-signed Drew Brees to a 2-year contract worth $50 million. The UFC will be postponing its next 3 events through April 11th. NASCAR will postpone all races through May the 3rd. And finally, Richard Lee, a New Hampshire police chief for nearly 20 years, was voted out from his position from a 3-member select board. He was told to immediately turn in his guns and uniform as well as the keys to his police cruiser. Lee took his police gear off before the board chairman, all the way down to his underwear and boots. He had no spare clothes or a ride home, so Lee walked a mile in 26-degree temperatures wearing nearly nothing before his wife picked him up. Where do you need a Blink security camera? On your porch to help protect deliveries? Helping keeping your family safe when you travel. How about alerting you when the kids get home from school? Where do you need Blink security cameras? Visit BlinkProtect.com/Dan. For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
It is rare when our show jumps into news gathering mode.
This is crazy.
Tom Brady has left the Patriots after 20 years, and Jeff Darlington's been telling you, as Tom Brady's been saying pretty nonstop, nobody knows what they're talking about. Jeff Darlington has been telling you he'd be shocked and surprised if Brady returned, and now it's official. He's not returning, although we don't know where he's going. Right before we get to Jeff Darlington, though, and before we find out who he's going to shock and stun on our show now that he's won the bet, I need to point out to the audience and everyone involved that the number of times that Greg Cody gets totally lucky against the hard network out is staggering. I am trying to do this. We're trying to spin a bunch of plates here, okay? And I'm trying to coordinate with Bristol, and I panicked because Bristol said 5 seconds, and I knew I was going to get clipped if he stopped talking, and he stopped talking at exactly the right moment. And I'm just sort of staring straight ahead at Mike Ryan, who's furious with me and should be, but I didn't have room for a syllable there.
Wait a second. Why is Mike Ryan furious with you? Greg Cody, for the first time in his life, stuck the landing. I mean,
because he wanted me to talk. He just wanted me to talk, and I'm like, if I talk, I'm I'm going to get clipped by the hard network out.
Okay, so I was thinking, I heard the 5-second count. I was thinking around 15 seconds, 10 seconds before that, you had to cut him off and ask him, hey, what's coming up this week on the podcast? Anything. You just had to cut him off.
I know.
It is your fault.
All right.
So he's an armchair quarterback even with the H&Os.
Everybody's a critic. All right. So Jeff Darlington, you're allowed to feel a little good about this, Jeff. I know you got a back and forth on Twitter, and some people are saying, hey, stop with the navel gazing, stop with the victory lap. But you got the story right, and it couldn't have felt good, right? We kept asking you, hey, this is informed, reported speculation. This is not just you speculating. It had to feel pretty lonely, even if you thought your information was good, to be out there on that story, right?
Yeah, it did. I mean, I feel like the Twitter thing. I feel uncomfortable doing that, but to a point, it feels good too. Yes, just more because Patriots fans are just so damn ruthless. I mean, just the and I take credibility seriously and all that, but who cares? I mean, it's just sports. I understand all that, but the funny thing to me is, like, I had one of my closest friends come to me and say about our previous bet about whether I would allow you guys to stun me if I was wrong. And one of my close friends came to me and said, are you really going to let Batard stun you? And I'm like, no, I'm going to be right. Like, I think nobody really believed that this was actually going to happen. And I guess I kind of understand that because it is so difficult to digest.
Jeff, do us a favor. I don't mind the gloating. Keep gloating. I want all journalists to continue to gloat when they get a story right. I think it's fantastic. Not journalistic, but my kind of journalism. What was that?
Yeah. Journalist flexing is not exactly like an intimidating thing, though. It's not.
But it's my kind of journalism. Put us there. Like, put Jeff Darlington's reaction, besides the Twitter reaction, like, put me there. Because I remember Dan and Stephen A., when the LeBron stuff was going on, saying they never wanted to be a part of a story like this again, predicting LeBron would leave Cleveland to come to, right? You remember that. And you were kind of in the middle of this one. So put us there, the relief that the reaction Jeff Darlington has when he hears that Tom Brady is not returning to the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I know, like, it sounds so stupid to say it again, but like, it wasn't a surprise to me. Like, I knew that this was going to happen like this. I just, I've been close enough to the story for long enough to where the people really closest to Tom even weren't surprised by this. But to your point, you still have that moment when it does happen. It's like, okay, finally, now we can kind of put a stamp on this and gloat and then move on. So, but I do think people need to understand, like, there was a lot of narratives that were going around for the past 2 months. People just basically saying things that made sense to them that weren't necessarily true. Like the idea that, oh, Tom is just flirting with free agency and he'll ultimately just wind up going back to the Patriots and using this as leverage. That was just never the case. Tom was just done with the Patriots. He was over it. He wants a new challenge. And I know that seemingly overly simplifies it, but quite honestly, that's just the truth.
So what was it, though? Like, on the list of reasons that he's done, is it the discounts over the years? Is it the Belichick relationship? Like, 1, 2, 3, if you had to list the reasons why he was done with the Patriots, what would they look like?
So I think it has its real peaks and valleys with Belichick the past few years. And, like, things got pretty ugly in August when it came to the negotiations for his most recent contract. And to the point where, we're talking about them coming back for a few $1 million and telling them to earn it in incentives and all that. And that's how he ended up winding up being like, you know what, fine, let's just do a 1-year deal and you guys aren't allowed to tag me. And I mean, I think that was probably, despite the fact that Brady and Belichick had got to a better place the year before that in 2018, once again, that contract negotiation sort of put them in this place where no longer, though, in 2019, did it feel necessarily to me like there was this crazy friction and tension. Instead, it actually felt like resignation. It felt more to me like this vibe of, let's just ride out this season, and then I'll go my way and you guys go your way. So by the end, honestly, it just felt like a stale marriage that maybe would kind of stay together for the purposes of comfort, not necessarily for all the reasons that they should stay together.
Jeff Darlington with us here on ESPN Radio. Jeff, you spent a lot of time, you still do, down here in Miami. You know the Dolphins organization very well. So when I tell you Byron Jones, Shaq Lawson, Kyle Van Noy, you have Brian Flores, who Brady is familiar with. Dolphins have 3 first-round picks, 6 picks in the top 70. Can you envision a scenario where they draft Tua and Tua gets to learn under Brady for a couple of years?
No, I don't think that's going to happen. Once upon a time, the Dolphins made the most sense for Tom Brady when this moment did occur. I could take you back 2 years ago when I felt like I would have probably put money on the idea of, if I was a gambling man, that Brady would wind up in Miami. But it just didn't. The timing didn't really work out. The Dolphins chose kind of a different direction, and now we're here. The Dolphins have been monitoring it. They have had discussions. Tom has cast a very wide net when it comes to teams. I just think that at this point, it's a pretty uphill climb, as I understand it. So I would not anticipate Brady winding up with the Dolphins.
You think he knows now where he wants to be?
He's got it down pretty good, but I don't think he went into today. I don't think when he wrote that letter that he wrote it knowing where he was going to go, which is probably difficult for people to digest, that he would be willing to float just out there. But I will say this, I think it's going to be pretty quick, pretty concise, and not something that drags on for very long. That said, I wouldn't expect anything, for instance, today.
You got a betting favorite?
I think Vegas. I saw the Vegas odds yesterday. I think they were onto something, but I don't think. No, I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to that anything's going to happen. I think that the Bucs make a lot of sense. Let's just put it that way. That if you look across the board, all along the things that Brady have seemingly coveted have been a collaborative coach, a roster that doesn't need to be on the brink of a Super Bowl, but needs to be, well put together. Somewhere in good proximity to New York for personal reasons, and I think that he wouldn't mind playing in some warmer weather. So, I mean, those 4 things kind of lead me to think that the Bucs make a lot of sense.
Doesn't it seem clear that he's going to regret this?
I don't think that he maybe, but I don't think that he views it that way. I think he's okay with this. Like, for him, it's not life or death. For him, it's fun. And I think he's at the point in his career where he looks at it and says, I got 6 rings. Like, I'm comfortable with that. I'm 42. I still like playing football. I just don't necessarily want to do it in this rigid conformity where I spent the last 20 years. So maybe he does regret it, but I think that he looks at this like he'd rather regret it and try it than not try it at all. If that's a little cheesy, but I think it's true.
All right, so help us out here. We lost the bet to you. You reported that you would be shocked and stunned if Tom Brady returned to the Patriots. He's not returning to the Patriots, and the bet was that you would be allowed at some future date to shock or stun one of us once there's no longer any social distance between us. So,
yes.
Who are you choosing to shock and stun? This is, everyone's a little scared right now, but you get, yes, Chris has got his fingers crossed. Jeff Darlington, you have won the bet, so what is your choice? Who will you shock and stun on ESPN Ooze?
If we can clear this with legal, which I realize is an important distinction to make, I mean, look, I know what all of the people around you are thinking right now, and they think I'm probably scared to say it, but I'll say it. I'm stunning Dan Le Batard.
Oh, no. Good choice. Good choice, Darlington.
I'm coming for the king, man. I'm coming for the king.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Jeff.
It's finally not me.
Jeff, thank you for being on with us. I appreciate it, Jeff.
Thanks, Dan.
We've been telling you to support the people who support us. What a brutal loss for me. Chris Cody is dancing around. He's dancing, or he's breakdancing in his house. Now we've got to find out what's it going to be. We're going to go to Human Resources and find out whether he could tase me, whether he can, whether stun gun me. We said cattle prod, and or just a stone cold stunner. It'll be one of those at a future date if we're ever allowed near each other again.
That was Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Everything for less, only at Walmart. That last segment, that was Straight Talk. If you missed any of our interviews, check them out on demand in the Dan Le Batard Show podcast, brought to you by Capital One. With Capital One, you can open a new checking or savings account with no fees or minimums. Welcome to Banking Reimagined. Capital One. What's in your wallet? Approval required. Capital One NA, member FDIC. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Dianna Russini going to join us in just a second on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Here's your SportsCenter update. The Panthers are giving permission to Cam Newton to seek a trade. Carolina is interested in signing Teddy Bridgewater.
Oh,
Kansas, yep. Patriots, Cam Newton, you like that?
Where'd that come from?
One of the reporters here at ESPN.
I thought we were going to do Teddy Bear. I thought it was going to be Teddy the Chicago Bear. No, what happened to that? All right, we'll ask Dianna Russini in a second.
It was a Schefter tweet about the Panthers and Cam Newton and Teddy Bridgewater, since you asked. Dan, you like this? Kansas basketball coach Bill Self said that he would accept the national championship based on being the top right team in the polls. It's the only way to win it.
That's funny.
And finally, a population of lapwings is called a deceit. I was kind of asking. SportsCenter is brought to you by Bolt 24. It's advanced hydration for athletes off the field with antioxidant vitamins A and C, electrolytes from watermelon and sea salt, and no artificial flavors or sweeteners. Bolt 24, all-day hydration for all-day athletes. For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
We have not sorted out the technology here yet, so there is some echo. So I can't go to Billy right now and ask him what his armpit just smelled like as he made the move of going under the I can't ask him through the echo? All right, let's ask him. Billy, how is everything under there? Because you just did an 11:30 a.m. check under the arms, as you often do. How'd everything go under there?
So far, so good. I get accused of that a lot. I wasn't actually smelling, but now that you ask, yeah, things seem to be going all right there. Got some Old Spice swag you're on.
Chris, what do you have for us on this subject? You've seen Billy do a lot of this during the show, right? Okay, very good. Dianna Russini joins us now on
Stop
ESPN.
Going to Chris, man. I'm telling you. Bad luck,
Now another screaming baby. Another screaming baby. Dianna Russini with us now on ESPN Radio. Always funny when the show jumps into news gathering mode. What Cam Newton, Teddy Bridgewater, what just happened there? Where'd that come from?
Why aren't you worried about how my armpits smell? They're fresh and clean. One of the hardest parts about free agency is you have to do one of those like really quick rinses because you don't want to miss a text message. So I've been hopping in, doing the quick 10-second soap rub down and dry off quickly. And, almost every single season I miss something in that 10 seconds. So I didn't miss this one, though. And typical Stugotz giving Adam Schefter the information on a story I broke. But thanks, Stu, for having my back again.
So, yeah. There's a lot going on. I mean.
I know, but it's not hard. You read Twitter, there's my name. You read it, but nope, give it to Adam. It's been a wild morning. So the last few days, I've been hearing about Teddy Bridgewater and Carolina, which really shocked me. I kept going back and actually Googling Teddy's name of seeing maybe other insiders had reported it, and I'm like, oh, this is weird. This is just a name I haven't even heard. But the source that gave it to me is ironclad. So I think right now we're just going through the process where Carolina is giving Cam the opportunity to seek this trade. They obviously made the decision. They want to move on from him. And you take a look at what Teddy Bridgewater could bring to Carolina if this deal does turn out to work out. You're talking about the same division. He obviously was with the Saints. He knows these opponents well. You've got Joe Brady calling the offense in Carolina. Joe Brady spent a year with Teddy in New Orleans. So it actually makes a lot of sense.
Dianna, what do you think the Panthers could get from a team that would want Cam Newton to be their quarterback?
That's the market for the trade right now is what I was doing before I just called in to try to get a sense of who wants Cam. Guys, the injury thing is real. In terms of when you think of Cam Newton and you talk to organizations about it, even just reaching out to other teams about what they think about Cam, everybody always just kind of says the same thing. It's like, yeah, if he's healthy and he's 2015. So, look, the worst case scenario, obviously, for Cam is going to be they cut him. I actually think that could happen, which, would surprise me. But I mean, wouldn't surprise me. But I'm not sure what they could get for him. I really don't know. And by the way, with this coronavirus situation and teams not being able to get physicals at their facilities with their team doctors, there's just like another layer to all this and in the value of these players.
We have somehow, I don't know how we did this, gone like an hour and a half without mentioning the name DeAndre Hopkins. Have you found anybody, has anyone explained what Houston and Bill O'Brien was doing in a way that makes sense to you? Is there anyone on the internet, anywhere, because I've not seen a reaction to a trade that's quite like this, where everyone's consensus is, what the hell did the Texans just do? If they're going to trade him, how do they not get more than that? How do they get a bad contract and a broken, disposable running back instead of something that's of value? Like, who's made a good argument on behalf of what the Texans did that makes sense to you, Dianna?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked me this. Because it's a two-part answer I have for you. One, we're all working from home right now, right? So life's a little different. And so the second this story broke yesterday, I immediately called Houston to try to get some answers. And I could not find my notebook anywhere. And the person was giving me a basic explanation of why there's value to this trade and what they were thinking. So the only thing I had in front of me was my W-2. Just sitting there, like my ESPN W-2. So I have my notes written about this trade on the back of this thing, which the W-2 is very sad looking to look at right now. But that being said, so the way it was explained to me was, by the way, I'm going to take a picture of this and send it to you guys when I hang up with you. The way they were looking at it, they got 2 second-round picks out of this. They know they don't have a first-round pick. This was a way for them to get more picks. But the bigger thing was, DeAndre Hopkins wanted a raise. They did not want to pay him more money because they did not think that he is that valuable for them. And when I pushed back on, well, are you kidding? The guy has over 100 catches. Deshaun Watson, he's the gotta-have-it guy for Deshaun Watson. When they need a guy to go to, it's DeAndre Hopkins. And the person that I trust a lot here in Houston pointed to the other teams that are dealing with high-paid wide receivers that got deals like Julio Jones in Atlanta, where it hurts their cap. And when I pushed back also on the fact that, well, this is the kind of player that can get you to the playoffs, they said, well, why don't you take a look at DeAndre Hopkins' numbers in the playoffs? And that will tell you where we see value in him. But Dan, that being said, I still think the issue here is always going to be you have Bill O'Brien, the football head coach, and you have Bill O'Brien, the GM. And I don't truly believe that the football coach loved this deal, but I do know that the GM did. The GM side of this loved this and thinks that this is smart.
Okay, because I'm not hearing anyone make that argument. I don't know what David Johnson's playoff numbers are, but that's also a bad contract. Like, everyone is talking about that contract as if it's not the kind of contract that you give to a running back, and they took all the money on. I haven't heard anybody put together an argument, Dianna. I understand you're going to a Houston source on what it is that they're doing. That I understand trading DeAndre Hopkins if you wanted to trade DeAndre Hopkins. What I don't understand is Stephon Diggs getting you more, Amari Cooper getting you more coming back. Like, these aren't receivers who are as good as DeAndre Hopkins.
And they're not. And the way I think Houston is, I know the way Houston is looking at this is they believe that this draft class coming up has receivers that they can grow and build and make great. And they obviously feel comfortable enough with Deshaun Watson and his ability to make the guys around him great and spectacular to believe that they could deal one of the best receivers in the game. And look, they're getting crushed today, as we all are. I hear what you're saying, and I'm not taking their side, by the way. I just talked to them, and this is how they're looking at it. It definitely didn't go all the way down the line of other coaches, by the way, of them agreeing with it. There's definitely reaction from everyone, even guys on the team, obviously, of like, what the heck? I had somebody in the building yesterday text me, if it wasn't for the coronavirus, people would be showing up to the facility banging down the door. But, there's no way we can say if this trade was good yet until we see next year and see what happens.
Dianna, you did such a great job covering the XFL. Those players from that league are free to sign with NFL teams right now. Are there any players garnering NFL interest?
Yeah, no, Mike, thanks for that question, because I'm talking to agents right now. So they're trying to figure out the rules still from the last time I checked with an agent of a quarterback, who I definitely think is going to have a great market. And I guess they're still ironing out how this works right now. But obviously the name that you guys have seen everywhere, PJ Walker's getting tons of attention from different teams as a backup, from Seattle to Houston even. I'm interested to see where he'll land, but I still think this is a piece that they're trying to figure out. And this will probably start to come together later tomorrow, maybe even Thursday, when we start hearing XFL players getting some action.
Dianna, go ahead and send us that W-2. We want to see, protect some of those numbers. I don't think you want some people to see some of the numbers.
You're going to send those to me?
You're the worst. How could you possibly give her story to Adam Schefter? Why? She's your friend.
Listen, she is my friend. I love her dearly. I have 19 windows open. I'm trying to do video chats with everyone on the show. There's that Brady's leaving. There's a lot going on here. Dianna, I'm sorry. I love you.
Dianna, thank you for being on with us. We appreciate it.
It's fine. Thanks for working, guys. I appreciate you keeping me entertained.
Thank you. We've got to figure out the sound issues and the video issues around here.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Ron Magill going to join us in just a second here on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Here's your SportsCenter update. The WWE has moved WrestleMania from Tampa to Orlando. They will hold the event at the WWE Performance Center in front of an empty crowd. The Kentucky Derby has been postponed and will be rescheduled for September 5th. And finally, a male baboon and his two wives ran wild in Australia after escaping from a medical facility where he was set to undergo a vasectomy. The baboons have since been captured, much to the male's chagrin. Damn it. It's having a good reading day right up until then. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at you. I'm laughing at you stumbling on the dismount of the last word. You're feeling good about yourself. You're feeling confident. You're like, I'm having a good reading day. Yeah. And then chagrin becomes chagrin and then becomes, damn it.
And now I got to say breakfast 5 times. Oh, jeez. Wendy's has breakfast now. We're talking fresh cracked eggs on every breakfast sandwich. Yep, it's going to be America's favorite breakfast. Download the Wendy's app for deals on your new favorite breakfast. Yep, for this, see you at Wendy's in the morning. Available at participating U.S. Wendy's. Why is Mike dancing back there? Did I said it right? 5 times? For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
He was happy for you. Mike Ryan roots for you. He does.
He sets the traps.
He doesn't have anything to do with Wendy's mass producing breakfast. Like that's a good point. Yeah. He doesn't. Ron Magill is going to join us shortly here, but can you please explain to me, because I'm already a little bit Tom Brady'd out, why it is that you spent your quarantine as Tony mows through snacks? I know this is happening all over America. People are, taking the food that they brought home for 8 weeks and they're mowing through it. Why you over the weekend decided that you were going to do an all-decade team for all the major sports from the 80s on? Like, how bored were you?
I forgot I said that to Mike. I'm bored. So I did my all 80s hockey team, my 90s hockey team. I've done it for all 4 of the majors. I am now, Dan, all 4 of the major sports. I am now putting together my top 10 tennis players of all time, both men and women. And I am also putting together my top 10 golfers of all time. And here's another thing I'm doing. I've gotten so bored and stir crazy that, like the Chicago Bears, for example, I wrote down last night my all Chicago Bears team. How great is that? It is fun. I got Jim McMahon and Sweetness. Amazing, Willie Gault.
I look forward, when football slows down a little bit, I look forward to going through some of those, because I really do feel like football needs to slow down for us so that we have something to talk about in 3 weeks, because we're not going to have very much as soon as this is over.
No, what we'll have is my all Bears team. I mean, my all-time Bears team, my Lions team. I'll have all of them, Dan. All 4 of the major sports, I'll have an all-time team for every team just to get us through.
Do you mind reading that baboon story to Ron Magill so that I could get his reaction to it and so that he could tell us wonderful baboon stories? Just read the story again if you don't mind.
Yep. Scored still. And finally, a male baboon and his 2 wives ran wild in Australia after escaping from a medical facility where he was set to undergo a vasectomy. The baboons have since been captured, much to the male's chagrin.
How often have animals and do animals escape from your zoo, Ron?
No, not often at all. I mean, we have had an occasional hoof stock, and a small antelope or something kind of jump a moat, but nothing dangerous, and it's very, very infrequent. Every now and then you might have a flamingo catch a breeze. He opens his wings and he freaks out, and he waits to jump on the exhibit on his own again because they have such a flock instinct. They want to stay together. So, no, not like that.
Ron, obviously there's all sorts of misinformation out on the internet. Obviously we're all in quarantine and the corona pandemic is dominating the news cycle. In terms of the animal kingdom and our pets, there's all sorts of rumors and innuendo out there as to how this can affect our pets. Can you give voice to what the truth is here?
Sure. What the best of our knowledge now is that it is not something that can be transmitted to pets. There's no danger of transmitting it to pets, and there's no danger of pets transmitting it to you. Though the original beginnings of this virus is believed to come from bats, it's from an exotic animal from a faraway place. It is not something that's transmittable through domestic animals or animals found here in the United States.
Can you explain to us the link there that you mentioned with bats? You said thought to be involved.
Yeah, it's believed that bats basically, through their guano, a lot of times they'll pass a virus onto sometimes a crop or food, but also through the wild animal markets. That's a huge problem, especially in Asia. I've been in Asia where you go through a market like you go through a flea market here, except that our markets in Asia have a wide variety of wild animals that they pull out of the wild and they eat, or they use them for all types of medicinal purposes. It's one of the most heart-wrenching and, my personal opinion, disgusting things you could ever see is you see these wild animals in these horrible little tiny bamboo cages for consumption, for eating, or for use as medicine, to where they use different parts, whether they're using the bile of bears or the bile ducts of bears, or using, the gallbladders of different animals. It's horrific what they're doing. And, a great article just came out in the New York Times showing the links to the amount of development that's going on, cutting into forests, tropical forests, cutting down these forests and bringing out these animals and using them for medicines and foods, and how that has become a gateway for so many of these types of pandemics. Remember SARS, remember Ebola. These are all stuff that started from what we believe, whether it be bushmeat, whether it be going into these exotic areas and releasing these types of pandemics. So people need to understand that, even if you don't care about animals, even if you don't care about wild places, when you start invading these places, you're opening Pandora's box. And when you start consuming animals like this or using them for medicines like this, you are opening a petri dish that can affect what's happening to our world right now.
Stay clean. Which animals keep themselves the cleanest in the wild?
Believe it or not, most animals keep themselves pretty clean in the wild. I mean, everything, you can even talk about things like wild pigs, and people think that's an oxymoron, right? A pig, you're dirty as a pig. Most pigs actually really aren't that dirty. But when it comes to animals really keeping themselves clean, you would have to look at a lot of birds. Birds have to keep themselves clean because of the feathers, keep them free of mites, keep them good for flight. It's basically their strength to survival. So birds are constantly preening their feathers. They're bathing quite often, and they do keep themselves pretty clean. Primates groom each other quite a bit, so there's a bit of a cleaning factor going on there. Of course, cats are constantly grooming themselves also, but generally speaking, animals are fairly clean. Even vultures. People look at vultures, an animal that's eating dead, rotten flesh, and you think, oh my God, that's disgusting. In reality, vultures are not that disgusting in the way they keep themselves clean. They actually preen their feathers. The reason they don't have a lot of feathers on their head is so when they bury their head into a rotting carcass, it doesn't get a bunch of guts and grime and disgusting stuff all stuck to the feathers of their head. It's much easier to keep their bald head clean when they bury it into that, rotting carcass.
Tony, what do you have for Ron Magill, Tone?
Hey, Ron, do ants sleep?
That's a good question. I would suppose that they do sleep, and they probably just do it in a massive amount of shifts because there's always a part of an ant colony that's somewhat active. But I would suppose that they do sleep, and my suspicion is that, it's just in small spurts like most animals. A lot of animals do not sleep the way we sleep in the sense that, a solid 8 hours. They go through, small spurts of sleep throughout the day, basically as almost a point of survival.
Who would you say is the strangest sleeper? Like, I know you've told us sharks using half their brain and stuff.
Yeah,
is there
a lot of dolphins, Brady, and birds do that because they're birds that can remain in flight and actually let half of their brain go to sleep and the other half takes over for their flying capability. The same thing with, marine mammals that are underwater. They can still have one half of their brain working so they are able to surface and breathe when the other half is able to go to sleep. So different animals have different ways. I don't know what the strangest sleeper would be, though. You can look at things, everything from bats that, of course, hang upside down, and then you have bears and some mammals that go into a torpid state or hibernation, which can sleep for months at a time. So it just depends on the animal, but it's quite varied.
Billy, what do you have for Ron Magill?
Ron, how much of the animals at the zoo's routine is thrown off by this, if at all?
Well, that's a good question. Right now, it's not much of the routine thrown off because the keepers are coming in, and this coronavirus, the only thing that's really changing is that the lack of public to come into the park. The fact is we're still doing everything the same. They get a much different change of routine when we have to prepare for something like a hurricane, because then we're locking them up, then we're giving massive quantities of food, and they have to go for a couple of days, with the storm going through. That normal routine is disrupted. Right now they're going through their normal routine minus the public that's on the walkway, so it's not really a big disruption to them.
They don't prefer that we not be there?
No, I don't think they do. I think that there's some animals that are actually, oblivious to it. There's some animals that are somewhat entertained by it. There's an enrichment in looking at people coming through. And there's some animals that, get tired of it, but they always have the option of going to a place. All the exhibits are designed in such a way so animals can get out of sight line and kind of get some privacy when they want it.
Roy, what do you have for Ron Magill?
Ron, I have a rooster walking around my neighborhood. How can I get rid of it?
Well, that's a good question. That's an ongoing issue down here in Florida. We have, of course, Key West is just that was a big thing. Actually, I think went to the commission of Key West on how we kind of reduce these roosters because they're always, roosting or cock-a-doodle-dooing in the morning and keeping people awake. The reality is trying to catch it is tough. There's so many funny videos on YouTube of people trying to catch a chicken or a rooster. Your best hope is that there's some natural predator like a coyote or a fox or something of that nature that might get it and eventually solve your problem.
Ron, stay safe. Good talking to you. We'll talk to you again next week.
Same to you, Dan. Take care. Bye-bye.
We ask you to support the people who support us. We will come back, I'm sure, with some Tom Brady talk.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Former Marlins team president David Samson going to join us in just a second here on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Here's your SportsCenter update. The WWE has moved WrestleMania from Tampa to Orlando. They will hold the event at the WWE Performance Center in front of an empty crowd. The Kentucky Derby has been postponed with a possible rescheduling for September 5th. And finally, a golden retriever puppy in Michigan has been branded a unicorn due to an unusual facial feature, having only a single ear positioned on the top of her head. Ray, ear spelled backwards, was brought to a vet as a newborn because she required emergency surgery. The dog's existing ear was originally on the side of her head, but started rising to the top after her surgery. SportsCenter is brought to you by Bolt 24. An athlete is an athlete 24/7, and part of always being prepared is always being hydrated. Bolt 24 has antioxidant vitamins A and C, electrolytes from watermelon and sea salt, and no artificial sweeteners or flavors. Bolt 24 is all-day hydration for all-day athletes. For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
Cam Newton is done in Carolina. Chris Mortensen reporting the Panthers and Teddy Bridgewater are negotiating a 3-year, $60 million or so contract. It's not done. There are details to be worked out, but when the new league year opens, according to Mort, on Wednesday, Teddy Bridgewater will be the new quarterback in Carolina as they overhaul everything there. Cam Newton will now become available. David Samson has a podcast, Nothing Personal with David Samson. It's got a lot of talk that you don't normally hear from an executive, and it's a lot of things that feel unclean sometimes because a lot of executives will clean things up in the way they look in public. And so I wanted to go to him on what it is that's happening with all these teams that are getting pressure to compensate their hourly workers. Thank you for joining us, David. Can you explain to us first off, because I don't really even understand much of any of this, when teams say they're going to compensate their hourly workers, like what does that mean exactly?
So I don't think they even know what it means exactly. Hourly workers are actually mostly employed by security companies or a concessionaire company, or sometimes even you outsource your parking and they're county employees or city employees. You also have police who are working overtime and count on that overtime, and fire rescue. So there's all sorts of people needed to put on an event. When these sorts of things happen, whether it's a hurricane or anything that cancels games, teams' initial reaction, and I did this as well, is to do an immediate donation of $100,000 or $250,000 to an organization like Red Cross, who has an opportunity to actually help people in need. With coronavirus, it's a little different because we're talking about economic hardship in terms of lost paychecks. So teams are a little ahead of themselves when they just say, hey, I'm going to donate $100,000 or $500,000, or I'm going to pay everybody their hourly rate. What does that mean? You can't identify who the people are because the people who flip your burgers come from a pool of people. So who wins the hourly check?
So how does this work? How do the calculations get done, and how does the money actually get into the hands of the people who need it?
So that is the perfect question. So what I would do if I were still with the Marlins, I would contact the unions who represent many of the workers, and then the companies who actually find the hourly workers. And I would get money to those companies because they're the ones who actually have the timesheets. They're the ones who have the names. And then I would work with those companies on a criteria for who we are going to give money to. But I've got to come up with a number. I can't just blanket say, hey, I'm going to pay everybody their hourly rate as though we were having games. It just won't work that way practically.
Major League Baseball did make $1 million donation to fight hunger as a result of school closures. What are you laughing at there? It was MLB and the MLBPA. You don't think that that's a number worth celebrating?
Hey, can I have $10 from you?
$10?
Do you have an extra in your pocket right now? Listen, it's tough for baseball. I get it. I was there. Coming up with numbers, it's very hard. There is a lot of money in their kitty. It's an $11 billion industry, and I know they've secreted away between the union and the Major League Baseball. You're talking about $600 or $700 million that is just literally being in an investment account. And for me, $1 million when you've got your players who are doing $100,000, and I'm doing $100,000 myself through an ML beer challenge to each of the community foundations, I just think baseball should have had a different number that was based on something they're doing. So they did it to try hunger for school children who are not in school and not eating. I get it, but let's be more specific. We could have worked with each of the 30 cities and helped the public school districts in each one with the gift toward those public school districts for X number of meals, and the number should have been higher.
Hold on a second. How much is in that kitty?
Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds.
And what is that? What is that there for? To do what?
It's there in case baseball has if there's a strike, if there's a lockout, if there is a need for baseball to step in and run a team or to lend money to teams if they need. This was created actually back in 2002 with the transaction that we were all involved in, selling the Expos to baseball and buying the Marlins from John Henry, who then bought the Red Sox from the Yawkey Trust. And it's just continued to build because each year baseball does not give to its owners all the national money that it collects. It keeps a portion back. It's called the withholding, and that money builds and builds and builds. And that's to say nothing of the money the individual teams have that they could be donating as well.
What is an owner's responsibility in the face of something this unprecedented?
I think you've got to stand up and take the microphone and say that you are working on trying to do the best you can, and you're going to have specific details, and then you work with your team president and with your HR department and with your partners, and you then announce a concrete plan. Because the worst thing right now for me is to have hourly workers or people who are servers in bars and restaurants around these arenas believe that they're going to get an hourly paycheck from a team or from a player who stepped up, but they're not at the end of the day. So I think honesty is necessary, and just if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But if you're going to do it, then at least have a plan that logistically can actually work.
What are your thoughts on the commissioner's leadership throughout this?
Oh, Dan. I mean, listen, he's a friend, and I was there when he got elected. I just think he's been a step behind, and I think it's hard right now. I don't think he ever dreamt that this would be as bad as it was, but it just means he wasn't paying attention and didn't want to hear it. So I think his head was in the sand a bit. It's amazing that we all had to wait for Rudy Gobert to test positive, and then all this started happening. That was still 2 to 3 weeks too late, but MLB waited even longer than that. The NBA acted in 4 minutes after Rudy Gobert tested positive because they were ready, and I'm not sure what baseball was doing.
Nothing Personal is the name of the podcast with David Samson. You're a germaphobe. How are you dealing with everything that's happening right now?
I mean, this is a Tuesday for me. I mean, I live as though there's coronavirus every day. So I have a full supply of sanitizer, toilet paper, tissues, Kleenex, paper towels, napkins. I have a year's supply always. So I'm doing fine. I'm not going on eBay and selling it. I've actually given away to people who have needed it, and I have no problem with that. But this is a normal for me, Dan.
What is the Major League Beard Challenge that you said? What are the details of that?
So thanks. Yeah, I said yesterday and announced that I'm going to give $1,000 a day for every day that until MLB's opening day, to a maximum of $100,000. And the first $30,000 will be $1,000 to each team's community foundation, because those are the foundations that are actually better prepared to help their community and their workers who are suffering. And then the last $70,000, if MLB's gone for 100 days, which it likely will be to local South Florida foundations who can get money to people who have suffered. And since it's been announced, it's growing, no pun intended. And I'm not going to shave until opening day, but I'm hearing from people on my Twitter, David P. Samson, saying, hey, can you help me? I have no job. And it's just heartbreaking. It's hard to help everyone, which is why honesty matters.
Are the Marlins going to do anything for their low-wage employees?
Where have they been? It would be nice, right? Wouldn't it be nice for them to stand up and actually take the mic and have Derek say something that actually means something, instead of just putzing around and waiting for someone to do something or for something to be mandated? And it doesn't have to be that he takes care of everyone, or he can take care of no one. But what they're doing now is the silence is actually deafening. And if they're working on a program, say you're working on a program. If you're not, say you're not. I just don't know why they're doing what they're doing. The Marlins hourly employees are contacting me on Twitter saying, hey, I know you were fired 3 years ago, but is there any way that I can be a part of this challenge and you can get money to our employees?
Nothing Personal with David Samson is the podcast. It is not normal for an executive to talk the way that he has talked about some of the things that he talks about. So check that out. Thank you, David. We appreciate the time.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Stugotz Casper Mattresses. I can tell you, by the way, that the Miami Heat are working on a plan. I know a lot of people rushed to microphones at the beginning to say that they were going to help their low-wage employees, but the Miami Heat will have some sort of announcement here shortly about a plan that they have in order to help their employees during this time. I have not heard any such thing from the Marlins, and the Marlins could use a little bit of pressure on that front, although I don't think it's going to do any good.